Okay, Bears Nation, you just watched that. And if you're not already arguing with somebody in your head about whether that's an elite quarterback or a still figuring it out quarterback, then you weren't paying attention. Because that debate right there, that's basically the entire conversation the national media is having about this team right now. And today, we are getting into all of it. What is UP, everybody? AJ LaMaestro here for Chicago Bears Hub. And before anything else, thank you. We hit 1,000 subscribers, and that means the world genuinely. But we are not slowing down. New target, 2,000 subscribers. And if today's breakdown gets you fired up even a little bit, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now because we've got a national outlet putting a number on this Bears roster. And in my own personal opinions, that number is going to make some of you very upset. So here's the setup. ESPN just dropped their full roster rankings for all 32 teams heading into this season, and they slotted the Bears in at 17th overall. Now, stick with me here because I went and checked the receipts on this, and it turns out that is the exact same ranking ESPN gave this team back in 2024, the year this team finished 5-12 under Matt Eberflus. 5-12, and now somehow with a new head coach, an overhauled roster, and in my own personal opinions, a legitimately more talented football team top to bottom. ESPN is saying, yeah, still 17th. I don't know about you, but something about that doesn't sit right with me. I think that 2024 team underachieved relative to its talent, sure, but I also think this current roster is significantly better on paper than that group was, and a stagnant ranking feels like it's not accounting for that. Now, before we get further into the reaction, let's talk about where ESPN's projections actually whiffed a little bit because this is the kind of thing that tells you how much digging actually went into this list. They had Noah Sewell projected as the Bears' third linebacker in the base defense. Problem is, Sewell is dealing with a torn Achilles and is not going to be ready for week one. And even when he does get back, DeMarco Jackson is currently ahead of him on that depth chart anyway. So that's a swing and a miss on the fine print. And in my own personal opinions, when a national outlet whiffs on something that's specific, it makes you wonder how deep they actually went on some of these other rankings across the league. But let's get into the meat of it because ESPN broke this down into four categories for every team: biggest strength, biggest weakness, an X factor, and a non starter to know. And honestly, some of this I actually agree with. Some of it I've got some real problems with. Let's start with the strength. According to ESPN's analysis, the Bears' biggest strength heading into this season is the offensive line. And look, in my own personal opinions, this one is not even close to controversial. This is just fact at this point. Think about where this unit was. Back in 2024, this offensive line allowed a league high 68 sacks. 68. That's an offense that could never get its footing, could never establish an identity because the quarterback was getting hit every single snap. Then this front office went out and completely overhauled the unit in the offseason, and it paid off in a massive way. This offensive line finished the season leading the entire NFL in pass block win rate, and they were fifth in the league in run block win rate. That is an unbelievable turnaround in a single offseason. You look at the pieces: Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson holding it down at guard, Darnell Wright anchoring right tackle, Jonah Jackson's return giving you continuity, and then bringing in a veteran center to replace the retired starter from a year ago, on top of drafting more depth up front. That's not luck. That's a front office identifying the single biggest issue on the roster and going out and fixing it aggressively. Now, is there some uncertainty? Sure, the presumed starting left tackle is recovering from a torn patellar tendon, and there's real doubt about whether he plays at all this year. But they brought back a proven veteran to hold that spot down if needed, and there's a question of exactly how good the center play will be in year one at that spot. But even with those question marks, in my own personal opinions, if you get just average to solid play at left tackle and center, this offensive line could be genuinely elite again. 2 years ago, this team couldn't piece together one good starter up front. Now you've got legitimate difference makers at three or four spots. That changes everything about what this offense can do. Now, here's where it gets a lot messier: the biggest weakness. And Bears Nation, I don't think this one is going to shock a single one of you. According to ESPN, the defensive line is the Achilles heel of this roster. And listen, I've been saying this for a long time now, and especially this offseason, the pass rush numbers from last year are simply not good enough. This defense finished 28th in pass rush win rate and 26th in run stop win rate. Those are not numbers a contending team can live with. Now, The interior returns Grady Jarrett and Jervon Dexter, with a journeyman addition brought in as rotational depth, but there wasn't a major splash addition at defensive tackle this offseason. At edge, there's actually some real intrigue. Montez Sweat, coming off a 10-sack season, is legitimately terrific, but the third-year edge rusher opposite him has never played a full 16 or 17 game season, and the other projected piece in that rotation is still working back from a torn Achilles of his own. In my own personal opinions, I actually think there's more upside at the edge position than people are given credit for if that young pass rusher takes the leap and if Sweat maintains his level of play. The real concern to me is depth. It's less do we have talent and more do we have enough of it, especially up the middle. And that brings up something worth monitoring closely. Grady Jarrett, he came in and banged up his knee relatively early in the season last year, and by most accounts, never quite looked like himself again afterward. He was heavily wrapped up the rest of the year and missed time. The question heading into this season is simple. Can he bounce back? I'm not sitting here saying he's turning back the clock 5 years, but if he can just be solid, above average even, that would be a real difference maker in the middle of this defense, helping stop the run and providing some interior pass rush pop that this defense desperately needs. Now, let's get into the X Factor because this is where I actually have some pushback for ESPN, and I want to hear your takes on this in the comments. Their choice for X Factor is Caleb Williams. Now, on the surface, I understand the reasoning. There's clearly still refinement needed in his game, and accuracy is the number one thing that jumps out. According to advanced tracking metrics, he ranked at the bottom of qualified quarterbacks in off target rate and completion and this entire offense. But here's my issue with calling him an X Factor, and in my own personal opinions, this is more of a boom potential label than a true X Factor. To me, an X Factor is a player where you genuinely do not know what you're going to get, high variance, unpredictable outcome. I don't think that's Caleb Williams. I think we already have a pretty strong sense of his floor after 2 seasons in this league. Even while posting some of those lower accuracy numbers, he still delivered good winning level quarterback play. His turnover rate stayed manageable, he created big plays out of structure, and he elevated in big spots. So the real question isn't, what do we get from Caleb Williams? We kind of already know. The real question is, how much higher can that ceiling go if he becomes a league average accuracy passer on top of everything else he already does well? Then you're talking about a legitimately elite quarterback. But that's a ceiling question, not a floor uncertainty, and that's why I don't love the labeling here. If you ask me who the real X factor is on this roster, I'm looking at that same young edge rusher I mentioned earlier. Was his strong finish to last season a legitimate sign of things to come? Or was it a small sample size fluke? If he's actually a double digit sack caliber player, now that changes the entire complexion of this pass rush. I'd also throw out a few other names in that same bucket. A starting cornerback's health across a full 16 plus games would be enormous for the secondary, and so would a receiver turned corner finally stabilizing as a true lockdown option outside. Left tackle play down the stretch versus a revolving door at the position is another swing factor. And you've got a rookie safety who, if he pairs well with the returning starter and represents a clear upgrade at that spot, could quietly be one of the more important pieces on the back end of this defense. Those, in my own personal opinions, are true X factors, genuine unknowns, not just ceiling questions on a player whose floor we already understand pretty well. And finally, the non starter to know, and I actually think ESPN nailed this one, Deo Odingbo. Now, let's rewind. This was a big free agent investment a year ago, brought over to be a difference making pass rusher opposite Sweat. Instead, 1 sack, 8 starts. Then an injury ended his season. That is about as disappointing a debut as you could possibly script for a big money signing. But here's the thing, and this is where I actually think there's a sneaky positive storyline buried in here. This guy has produced before. He's not someone who's never shown flashes. If you actually average out his sack production across the seasons where he played close to a full slate of games, you're looking at a player who's capable of somewhere in that 4 to 5 sack range, plus solid run defense as a rotational piece. Now, is that going to justify the money the Bears are paying him? No, not even close. But if he's not even projected to be a starter with the younger edge rusher likely holding down that other starting spot, and he's simply a rotational piece who gives you 4 or 5 sacks and holds up against the run, in my own personal opinions, that's a genuinely useful player to have in this mix, especially on a defensive line that desperately needs more juice up front. He reportedly looked good and healthy heading into offseason work. So the real question is whether that holds up once the pads come on in training camp. That's a storyline absolutely worth tracking all summer. So there you have it, Bears Nation. ESPN says 17th overall, same as the disaster of a season 2 years ago. Biggest strength, the offensive line. Biggest weakness, the defensive line. Caleb Williams tagged as the X factor, even though I think that's more of a ceiling question than a true unknown. And Deo Odine Bo as the name to watch as a rotational piece that could quietly matter a lot more than people expect. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think 17th overall is fair? Or is that disrespectful given everything this front office has changed since that 5-12 season? And who is your real X factor for this team heading into the year? Drop that name in the comments because I read every single one of them. If you made it this far, you already know what to do. Smash that like button, get in that comment section, and go toe to toe with me on this ranking. And if you're not subscribed to Chicago Bears Hub yet, lock it in right now. We are chasing 2,000 subscribers, and I want every single one of you along for the ride as we break down every angle of this team, no filter, all season long. I'm AJ LaMaestro. Let's go, Bears Nation.